I never could have imagined that the happiest day of my son's life would become the worst day of mine. That evening, as I adjusted my pearl necklace in front of the mirror, I felt a strange mix of pride and unease. My name is Donna Miller. I'm 63 years old, living in Boston, and I was getting ready for my only son Michael's engagement party. The navy blue dress I chose was elegant, simple, not too flashy. I had learned long ago never to outshine anyone, especially Rachel, the 32-year-old bride, to be beautiful and fiercely jealous. "You look lovely, Mrs. Miller," said Grace, my housekeeper and dearest friend of over 20 years, as she zipped up my dress. "I'm sure Dr. Michael will be proud of his mother," I replied, with a faint smile in the mirror, trying to believe it. In the past 3 years, since Michael had met Rachel, he had changed. The gentle boy who used to hug me after long shifts had turned into a distant, cold man. Whenever he stopped by, he stayed only a few minutes, eyes glued to his phone, waiting for her messages. "Is everything ready at the hotel?" I asked Grace, holding the small velvet box that contained my mother's diamond hairpin. A family heirloom I planned to give Rachel as a symbol of acceptance and peace. "Everything's perfect, ma'am," Grace said. "White and blue flowers, the lobster appetizer Dr. Michael loves, and the 3-tier wedding cake from the French bakery downtown. It'll be a beautiful night." I had spent nearly all my savings on that event. Though Michael was a successful surgeon, he hadn't offered to help financially. "Mom, just let Rachel and me handle it. You just need to show up and enjoy," he said. But I knew the truth, that party wouldn't exist without me. Maybe I wanted too badly to feel close to my son again, to bridge the growing distance between us. I arrived at the ballroom an hour early to check every detail. The scene was breathtaking. Blue hydrangeas, warm golden light, soft music filling the air. One last attempt from a mother trying to show love through action. Guests began to arrive. Michael's friends from med school, his hospital colleagues, and Rachel's family, her elegant parents, and her younger brother with his girlfriend. Rachel's mother looked me up and down, assessing whether I was worthy of standing in this room. I smiled politely, swallowing the sting of discomfort. Michael and Rachel arrived last, like two movie stars stepping onto a red carpet. She dazzled in a silver-fitted dress, her dark hair in loose waves. He looked handsome in a charcoal gray suit, the spitting image of his late father. My heart tightened with pride and longing. "Everything looks wonderful, Mom," Michael said quickly, giving me a brief, careless hug before turning to greet his friends, leaving me standing alone. The night passed in laughter, champagne toasts, and conversations that didn't include me. Rachel's friends looked at me as if I were some outdated decoration. Michael's friends talked about surgeries and investments. I sat in a corner, watching the party I had poured my heart into, feeling like a stranger in my own son's world. When it came time for the toasts, Rachel's father spoke first, a long speech about the bright future of two brilliant young doctors. Everyone laughed and applauded. I gathered my courage, took the microphone, and felt my heart pounding. My chance to give my blessing, to remind him that his mother is always by his side. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "Thank you all for celebrating with our family tonight," as Michael's mother. Before I could finish, Rachel stepped forward. She smiled sweetly, but her eyes burned with anger as she snatched the microphone from my hand. "That's enough, Mrs. Miller," she said in a syrupy but icy tone. "Everyone knows you love being the center of attention, but this is our day, and it's time you understood that an old, useless woman like you has no say in our lives anymore." The room fell silent. About 150 guests froze, eyes darting between us. It felt like a slap across my face. My cheeks burned, my heart pounded wildly. I looked at Michael, my only son. the one I had sacrificed everything for. Surely he would speak up. Surely he would defend his mother. But no. He smiled. A short, unmistakable smile. Then, he clapped. Well said, honey. Put Mom in her place. The world stopped. I heard whispers, saw a few sympathetic glances, but Michael and Rachel just stood there, smiling, pleased with my humiliation. I stood up, straightened my dress, lifted my head high, picked up my purse and the little velvet box. I wish you both happiness, I said, my voice calm, almost serene. And I hope you never have to know what it feels like to have a child who makes his mother ashamed in front of the world. I turned and walked out. No one stopped me. No one called my name. I took a taxi home. Only when the door closed behind me did I finally collapse. I cried harder than I had since the day my husband, Richard, died. I cried for the betrayal, for the humiliation, for the son I thought was kind and loving, now just a stranger wearing his face. Sitting on the sofa in my evening gown, I looked down at the small velvet box, the diamond hairpin my mother used to wear on special occasions. She had given it to me before she passed, saying, "Give it to your son's wife someday, so the love in our family will live on." How ironic. I opened the box and stared at the glittering reflection of the diamonds. That piece would never belong to Rachel. It would never symbolize a family where I was called a useless old woman and my own son applauded in agreement. That night, I fell asleep on the sofa, still wearing my evening gown. An engagement party had turned into a funeral not for a person, but for a relationship I once believed could never break. When the morning light came through the window, I knew something inside me had awakened a strong, steady part I thought I had lost. I understood that from now on, I had to protect myself, even if it meant losing my only son. The phone rang at 9 a.m. It was Michael. I didn't answer. He called all day. Messages kept coming. "Mom, we need to talk. You know how Rachel is, she just overreacted." "Everyone was stressed, Mom. There are important things we need to discuss." Not a single apology, not a trace of remorse, only excuses and the anxious tone of someone afraid of losing something, not his mother, but her property. Some memories hurt more than scars, and I knew, from that moment, Donna Miller would never be the same woman again. In the days following the party, I stayed home, refused visitors, and let the phone ring endlessly. I needed the silence, not only to swallow the public humiliation, but to heal the wound inside my heart. Sitting in the armchair in the living room, the same spot where I used to rock Michael to sleep, I opened the old photo albums. There was Michael at 5, smiling wide, holding a piece of paper that said, "For the best mom ever." Michael at 12, wearing his first science medal, eyes searching for me in the crowd for approval. Then Michael on his medical school graduation day, his arms wrapped tightly around me, both of us crying from joy and exhaustion. "See, Mom? We did it," he said that day. "You always told me we would." And we truly did, though only I knew the price of it. The nights working 2 or 3 jobs, the years without vacations or even new shoes, just to pay his tuition. This small house I had to refinance, adding years of payments to afford his textbooks and medical instruments. I did it all without resentment. Since my husband, Richard, passed away suddenly, it had been just the 2 of us in Boston, working weekends at the public library. Fine, it meant more money for Michael's books, taking extra shifts at the clinic where I was a manager during holidays. That was all right, it paid for the study abroad program he dreamed of. Then the phone rang again, pulling me from my thoughts. This time it wasn't Michael, it was my sister, Caroline. "What's going on, Donna? I've been calling for days. A friend of mine was at the party and told me everything." "Is it true?" I sighed. I was finally ready to say it out loud. Yes, Caroline. Every word is true. Rachel called me a useless old woman in front of everyone. And Michael clapped. There was silence on the other end. Caroline, who always had something to say, was speechless for the first time. Oh, dear Lord, Donna. I always knew that woman wasn't good. But Michael, how could he? That's what I've been asking myself for days. When did my son become such a stranger? Have you talked to him? No. He's called, texted, but I'm not ready to hear fake apologies. Caroline hesitated, her tone cautious. There's something you should know. I don't want to upset you, but after what happened, you deserve to hear the truth. My heart tightened. What truth, Caroline? Do you remember Martha, Dr. Allen's wife, Michael's colleague at the hospital? Last week she told me something. Michael's been talking at work about making plans for your house. I froze. What plans? He told his coworkers that when you pass away or get put in a nursing home, his exact words, he and Rachel would renovate the place and move in. He spoke as if the house already belonged to them, just waiting for the right time. The pain in my chest twisted like a slow knife. No longer a mother to be loved or cherished, just an obstacle between him and what he believed was his inheritance. Donna, are you still there? Yes, I replied mechanically. Thank you, Caroline. After hanging up, I sat in silence for hours. The house, the place where Michael grew up, where I spent my youth, suddenly felt different. It was no longer a home, but a possession to be claimed. The walls that had once witnessed my love and sacrifice now seemed to look back at me with quiet sorrow. I walked into Michael's old room, which I had kept untouched since he moved out 7 years ago. The shelf still held his childhood trophies, a few medical textbooks from his first year in college, and the blue plaid blanket he used to love. The room felt like a shrine to the boy who had once been my entire world. Now I finally understood. He was just waiting for the day his mother died to seize what he saw as his inheritance. The phone buzzed again. A new message from Michael appeared. Mom, we need to talk about the house. I have an important proposal for you. Call me back. And there it was, the important matter he had been mentioning these past few days wasn't about concern or remorse. It was just urgency, the desperation of a man eager to secure his share of my property. I sat down on the edge of his bed, exhaustion washing over me. I remembered a conversation from 2 months earlier, when Michael had said, Mom, you should think about selling this house, getting something smaller. It'd be easier for you. A big house like this is too much work for one person. You'd live more comfortably if you sold it. At the time, I believed he was speaking out of concern. Now, I saw it clearly. It had been the first step in convincing me to let go. He was probably hoping I'd sell it to him below market value. Or worse, transfer ownership as an early inheritance. As that thought settled, the landline rang. I picked up automatically. Mrs. Donna? Grace's warm voice came through. I just wanted to check on you. It's Tuesday, my cleaning day. But if you'd prefer, I can come another time. The genuine concern in her voice brought tears to my eyes. It's all right, Grace. You can come. Actually, I could use the company today. An hour later, Grace arrived. She found me sitting on the bed, surrounded by scattered photographs. One look, and she knew something terrible had happened. No one understood my life the way Grace did. She had worked for my family since Michael was 10, just a few months after Richard, my husband, passed away. She had seen my struggles. The nights I worked myself to exhaustion, caring for Michael when I was sick, cooking when I barely had the strength. It was she who helped Michael prepare for his high school prom while I lay in the hospital with pneumonia. What happened, Mrs. Donna? She asked gently, sitting beside me. And I told her everything, the humiliation at the party, Michael's reaction, Rachel's cruelty, and Caroline's revelation about the house. As I spoke, I watched Grace's face shift from shock to outrage, then to deep sorrow. The worst part, Grace, I concluded, is that I don't recognize that man anymore. I don't know who he is, but he's certainly not my son. People change, Mrs. Donna. Sometimes for the worse. That relationship between Michael and Rachel, you saw it happen, didn't you? Little by little, he started drifting away, speaking differently, acting like someone else. She was right. The signs had been there all along. I had simply chosen to ignore them, the way Michael would check his watch impatiently at dinner, how he avoided introducing me to new friends, how Rachel made snide remarks that Michael either dismissed or laughed at. "What will you do now?" Grace asked, carefully gathering the photos. "I don't know yet, but I do know. I have to protect what's mine. Not just my home, but my dignity and self-respect." That night, after Grace left, I took a long shower and thought deeply. Not just about Michael and this painful situation, but about my entire life. How, after Richard's death, I had poured all my strength, hope, and love into my only son, making him the center of everything. Maybe that was my mistake. Not love, not sacrifice, but forgetting myself, a woman of worth beyond the role of mother. Perhaps, without realizing it, I had taught Michael that my purpose was to serve his interests, that my life was merely an extension of his. But now, at 63, I still had time to correct that, to draw boundaries, to show him, and myself, that I was more than just the mother of Dr. Michael. That night, as I lay in bed, I made a decision that would change everything. If he saw me as a means to an end, if our relationship had been reduced to exploitation, then I would redefine it completely. Not out of revenge, but out of justice. Tomorrow morning, I would meet with my attorney, Richard Bennett, who had handled my affairs since my husband's death, and review every plan and asset I had. A strange sense of peace settled over me after that decision, as if I had finally reclaimed control of my life after decades of submission. The road ahead would be painful, but necessary. For the first time since that humiliating party, I slept without tears. Sometimes, silence is the loudest sound in the world. 2 days later, I sat in the waiting room of Mr. Bennett's law office in Boston. The room was elegant and calm, brown leather chairs, a secretary speaking softly like a breeze, a perfect place to make an important decision. "Mrs. Donna, Mr. Bennett will see you now," the secretary said gently. Mr. Bennett, a man around 60 who had handled my legal matters since my husband's passing, stood up to greet me with a courteous smile. I see you again, Donna. I was surprised by your urgent call. Is everything all right?" "Not exactly, Mr. Bennett. I need to make some major changes to my documents today, if possible." His eyes brightened slightly, recognizing the determination in mine. Without further questions, he gestured for me to sit and opened his notebook. "I'm listening. What's going on?" For nearly an hour, I told him everything: the humiliation at the engagement party, Michael's plans for my house, and the bitter truth that my son saw me not as his mother, but as an obstacle between him and my property. "I understand," Mr. Bennett said, his tone low and deliberate after listening carefully. "What would you like to change?" "I want to rewrite my will, but more than that, I want to transfer some assets while I'm still alive." I explained my plan in detail: to transfer ownership of my current home to Grace, the woman who had served my family faithfully and been my true friend for more than 20 years. Even while still renting a small apartment far from town, I wanted to buy myself a smaller home, better suited to my situation, and change the beneficiaries on my insurance and investment accounts. "Are you certain? Your son might object." I'm completely certain. Michael doesn't need my money. He's a successful doctor with a solid career. But Grace, after a lifetime of caring for my family, still doesn't have a home of her own. Mr. Bennett took some notes, then looked up. Legally, you have full control over your property, as long as the required share for heirs is respected. The transfer you mentioned would be considered a gift, and you can do that within the limits of the law. We discussed the details of the procedure. The paperwork was drafted, signed, and Mr. Bennett promised to expedite the process, understanding the emotional urgency behind my decision. Are you prepared for the social and family consequences? He asked when the documents were done. Your son is likely to react strongly. I took a deep breath. I'm ready. Michael has already shown me who he truly is and how little he values the bond between us. Now it's time I show him who I am. I left Mr. Bennett's office feeling an unfamiliar lightness, as if I had finally lifted the weight I'd carried for years. The weight of unreturned expectations, of a mother's one-sided love. In the days that followed, my phone rang constantly. Michael's tone shifted between anger and fake concern. Why won't you answer, Mom? I'm worried about you. Mom, let's talk like adults. We have important things to discuss. While the legal process moved forward, I started searching for a new home, small, cozy, with a backyard where I could grow roses. A place that was truly mine, free from painful memories. A week later, I called Grace to come over. She arrived right on time, her eyes filled with concern at my serious tone over the phone. Are you ill, Mrs. Donna? She asked, her brown eyes studying my face. I'm better than ever. I smiled, inviting her to sit at the kitchen table, where I'd already poured coffee. There's something important I need to tell you. I gently explained everything, that I had transferred ownership of this house to her, that the paperwork was being finalized, and soon she would hold the official deed in her hands. Grace froze, shock turned into confusion, then tears. But why, Mrs. Donna? You can't do this. I don't deserve it. I took her rough, calloused hands, the same hands that once held Michael when he was sick, cooked countless meals for my family, and wiped away my tears on lonely nights. You deserve it, Grace, more than anyone. All these years, who was there when I needed help? Who cared for Michael when I worked late nights? Who comforted me when everyone else disappeared? You? Always you. But what about Mr. Michael? Will he accept this? Michael made his choice when he let someone humiliate me in public, when he applauded, when he plotted to take this house as a right, not a gift. Grace wiped her tears, shaking her head in disbelief. I never thought, after everything you did for him. That's exactly why I'm doing this, Grace. Because of everything I did for him. Because I deserve respect. And because some lessons can only be learned through consequences. In the days that followed, we went house hunting together. I found a small place in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Boston, perfect for my later years. By selling the car I hardly used and adding a bit from my savings, I was able to buy the new house without any trouble. A new chapter of my life had begun. When the news spread that I had transferred my house to Grace, something impossible to keep secret in our circle, the first reaction came quickly. Caroline, my sister, called right away. Is it true, Donna? Did you really give your house to Grace? Michael's furious. He called me, told me to convince you to stop. Yes, Caroline, it's true. And Michael has no right to be angry. That house is mine, bought with my hard work, and I have every right to decide what to do with it. But that's your biggest asset. Where will you live? I'm buying a smaller place that suits me better. Don't worry. I have my savings and pension. I'll be fine. There was a long silence on the other end, then a sigh. You've always been stubborn, Donna. But this time, I think you're right. After what Michael did, maybe this is the only way he'll learn. That night, I sat in my armchair in the living room, staring at the half-packed boxes around me, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the broken hopes for the son I thought I had raised into a good man, only to realize it was all an illusion. Relief, because I was finally acting according to my own worth, setting boundaries that should have been there long ago. The phone rang again. It was Michael. This time, I answered. Mom, we really need to talk urgently. You're right, Michael. I think so too. Is it true you're giving our house to the maid? Have you lost your mind? His tone was cold, filled with contempt, and the way he said our house made me realize that, in his mind, my love and labor had never truly mattered. That house is mine, Michael. I paid for it with my own money and effort. And yes, I've decided to give it to Grace, the woman who has cared for us for over 20 years, including you. That's ridiculous. I'll sue. You're clearly not in your right mind. First, you embarrassed me by walking out of the party like a fool, then you disappeared for days. Now this? Is this your way of punishing me? His voice grew louder, full of anger and disdain. The son I once loved more than myself now sounded like a stranger, selfish, cold, consumed by greed. I'm not punishing you, Michael. I'm ensuring that what's mine goes to someone who deserves it. Someone who has been loyal, respectful, and truly loving. You have your clinic, your career, and a steady income. Grace only has her hard work and an uncertain future. You'll regret this, he threatened, his tone low and sharp. When you're sick, when you're alone, don't expect me to help. Those words stabbed through my heart like a knife, but they only confirmed what I already knew. My son had become someone who could abandon his own mother for money. I understand, Michael, and I respect your decision. Goodbye. I hung up before he could reply. My hands trembled, my heart pounded, yet a strange strength was growing inside me, the certainty that I was doing the right thing. Losing a child is the deepest pain a findability mother can feel, but worse still, is clinging to a relationship built on exploitation and disrespect. I knew the storm had just begun. Michael wouldn't easily accept losing what he believed was his right. But for the first time in years, I was ready to face whatever came in my own way. Have you ever felt invisible, even when surrounded by people? For years, that's exactly how I felt. Present but unseen, needed but replaceable, valued only for what I did, not for who I was. 3 days after that phone call, the doorbell rang early in the morning. I was already up, brewing coffee, trying to steady myself amid the emotional storm. I knew he'd show up eventually. I opened the door, and there he was. Michael, the boy I once held in my arms, now a 35-year-old man with fury in his eyes. No greeting, no hug, just anger, written all over his face. Can we talk? He demanded. Come in, Michael, I said calmly, pointing to the living room. He stormed in like a tempest, not even giving me time to close the door. What do you think you're doing? Have you completely lost it? You're giving our house to the maid? There it was again. The house I had paid for alone, now claimed by him, as if it had always been his. That house belongs to me, Michael. It always has. And Grace isn't the maid, she's the woman who raised you and took care of us for more than 20 years. Unbelievable. She's an employee, she was paid to do her job. You really want to give your property to a stranger instead of your own son? A stranger? I repeated, keeping my voice calm. Grace was there when you had chickenpox at 11, while I was at work. She was there when you broke your arm falling off your bike and I was stuck on a hospital shift. She woke up early to cook your breakfast before every exam and sewed the button back on your shirt for your first interview. What exactly makes her a stranger, Michael? He turned away, a flicker of embarrassment on his face, but quickly hid it under that same cold expression. You're doing this to get back at me for what happened at the party, aren't you? Because Rachel spoke the truth no one else dared to say? The mention of that night made my cheeks burn, but my voice stayed steady. What truth, Michael? That I'm a useless old woman? That I have no place in your life anymore? Is that what you really believe? Rachel just spoke out of frustration. She was stressed from the event, and you were drawing too much attention, and you clapped. I interrupted softly but firmly. You clapped while your fiancé humiliated your mother in front of hundreds of people. A flash of shame crossed his eyes, but it vanished quickly. It was just a moment, Mom. Everyone makes mistakes. Yes, everyone does, Michael. But the important thing is taking responsibility for those mistakes. He started pacing the room like a trapped animal, stopping in front of the bookshelf filled with photos of him graduation day, his first medical conference, the hospital award ceremony. I've always been a good son, he said quietly, more to himself than to me. I've always respected you. I've always taken care of you. Taken care of me, Michael? You mean by visiting less and less, ignoring my calls, or by planning to take my house once I die or get sent to a nursing home? Those were your words, not mine. He spun around sharply. Who told you that? Those are lies, twisted rumors. Does it matter? What matters is that you confirmed it yourself through your anger when you learned you wouldn't inherit, and through your outrage when I chose to use my own property as I wished. Michael slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. His voice came out heavy. What do you want, Mom? Just tell me what I need to do to stop this madness. Michael, it's a decision made with complete clarity. The house will be transferred to Grace. I've already bought myself a smaller one. The papers are being processed, and you can't change that. He looked at me, his eyes a mix of confusion and contempt. You'll regret this when you're sick, lonely, and need help. Who will you call then? Your maid? The cruelty in that question said it all. That in his eyes, I was nothing but a burden. If I need help, I'll call her, I replied calmly. At least she's shown me more loyalty and love than my own son. Michael jumped to his feet, shouting, This isn't over. I'll sue you. I'll prove you're no longer mentally sound. Go ahead, I said softly. Doctors and the court will have their say. There's nothing unusual about rewarding someone who truly deserves it. He paused at the door, turned back, and said, Rachel was right. You're just a bitter old woman who can't stand seeing her son happy. You're clinging to your money instead of supporting your family. The irony almost made me laugh. Who was really clinging to money? Who was truly viewing everything through gain and loss? If that's how you see me, then there's nothing more to say. I wish you and Rachel happiness. The door slammed shut, making the picture frames rattle. I stood still for a long time. The break between us was complete. The son I once loved unconditionally had revealed his true self, a stranger blinded by greed and selfishness. The pain was immense, yet strangely, I felt no urge to turn back. Something inside me had changed forever. The desperate need to please, to be accepted, to hold on to the mother-son bond, it had been replaced by dignity and self-respect. As I expected, Michael actually hired a well-known attorney and filed an injunction to stop the house transfer, even petitioning the court to declare me legally incompetent. But Mr. Bennett, my lawyer, had prepared everything meticulously. Medical records confirmed I was completely sound, and witnesses testified that I lived independently and lucidly. That pitiful attempt only exposed Michael's true nature even more, not just to me, but to his friends and colleagues as well. Your son is digging his own grave both professionally and personally, Mr. Bennett said during one of our meetings. At the hospital, people say he's become obsessed with the lawsuit and has been neglecting his patients. Some colleagues even refused to testify for him. They're shocked he'd sue his own mother over money. I didn't feel satisfaction, only sadness. Michael didn't realize that in trying to take away my independence, he was destroying himself, not just his reputation, but his character. A month later, I received an official letter from Michael, not an apology, but a cold statement. I hereby withdraw all legal action, but consider our relationship as mother and son completely over. Since you chose a stranger over your family, I'll respect that choice. Don't expect any contact or support from me. I read the letter over and over, sitting in the kitchen of the house that would soon no longer be mine. The words were cold, but strangely, they brought me relief. The endless cycle of expectation, disappointment, and manipulation was finally over. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into a drawer. Maybe one day, Michael will understand that real love comes without conditions, that a mother isn't a bank or an asset to be used, and that relationships can only survive when built on mutual respect. Until that day comes, I'll keep living my life with dignity, peace, and the quiet faith that, painful as it was, I made the right choice. Sometimes, in a single moment, you stop being mom and become a burden. It doesn't happen in one dramatic scene, it happens slowly, bit by bit, as the kindness in someone you love is worn away. And then one day, at an engagement party, all the masks fall and the truth stands bare. You are no longer a person, just an obstacle in someone's path. 6 months have passed since that fateful night. Spring has come, bringing new blooms to the little garden at my current home. A small, cozy house in the suburbs of Boston, with 2 bedrooms, a simple living room, a comfortable kitchen, and most importantly, a balcony full of roses and hydrangeas. 3 months ago, the transfer of my old house to Grace was finalized. I'll never forget her face when I handed her the keys and the ownership papers. Her eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling in disbelief. "Mrs. Donna, I still can't believe it," Grace said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never thought I'd have my own home one day. A place I wouldn't have to rent anymore." "You deserve it, Grace. Think of it as a small token of gratitude for decades of loyalty and love." She retired soon after, at 63. These days, Grace visits often not as a housekeeper, but as a true friend. We drink tea on the porch, laugh about old memories, and share recipes. It's a genuine friendship, built on mutual respect, not obligation or gain. As for Michael, I heard from acquaintances that his wedding with Rachel took place quietly, nothing like the grand event they had once planned. It seems the scandal at the engagement party and the legal battle that followed had tarnished his reputation at the hospital and in social circles. Many prominent guests refused to attend after hearing how he had treated his mother. I don't feel triumphant, only a gentle sorrow. For the son I lost, or perhaps never truly had. For the man he could have become if ambition and bad influence hadn't clouded his values. Yesterday, I went to a shopping mall in Boston to buy a birthday gift for my sister, Caroline, who just turned 65. While waiting in line to pay, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Mom." I turned slowly. Michael stood there, holding a few shopping bags, looking thinner, older than 35 should look. For a moment, our eyes met his uncertain, mine calm. "Hello, Michael," I said softly. "Are you doing well, Mom?" For an instant, genuine concern flickered on his face. "I'm fine, thank you," I replied. "And you?" He shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "Work at the hospital's been exhausting lately." I nodded without asking more. Between us was an awkward silence. Too many words unsaid. Too many wounds unhealed. "I heard you moved," he said quietly. "And that Grace is living in the old house." "That's right. I have a smaller home now, one that suits me better." And Grace finally has a place of her own after a lifetime of hard work. Michael lowered his head, then looked back at me. Rachel and we've separated. The news didn't surprise me. Relationships built on material values rarely survive the first real test. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. She changed after the wedding. Or maybe I was the one who finally saw her clearly. The demands, the resentment, the way she looked down on people. I wanted to say, I warned you, but there was no point. I stayed silent and let him continue. I've been thinking a lot about you, Mom, Michael said, quietly, about what happened between us, about that night, about everything. I've thought a lot too, Michael, about boundaries, respect, and what really matters in life. The line moved forward. I finished paying. Michael stood, waiting behind me. When I turned, he stepped closer, a bit hesitant. Do you think that one day we could really talk? I mean, truly talk? I looked at the man standing before me, no longer the perfect boy I remembered, nor the cruel stranger from recent years. Just a human being, flawed, vulnerable, and perhaps beginning to see beyond himself. Maybe, Michael, someday, when we're both ready for an honest conversation. He nodded, accepting that uncertain answer. Could I at least have your new address or phone number? I hesitated for a moment. Finally, I took a store receipt and wrote my number on it. If you plan to visit, call first, I said, handing it to him. That was how our encounter ended. No emotional reunion, no instant forgiveness, just a quiet acknowledgement that maybe, one day, we could rebuild something new from the ashes of what once was. On the way home, I thought about that brief moment, about how calm and strong I felt, no longer desperate to be loved or forgiven. In these 6 months, I had changed from a woman who once endured every humiliation in the name of motherhood into someone who knows how to set boundaries and live for herself. Tonight, as I watered the roses in my small garden, I realized that true freedom doesn't come from leaving your child or dividing your property. It comes from understanding that your worth isn't defined by anyone's approval, not even by the person you once loved most. For years, I had confused love with obedience, sacrifice with self-erasure. I used to think being a good mother meant giving up everything, even dignity. Now I understand. Real love, whether between mother and child, siblings, or friends, never asks you to shrink so someone else can grow. If one day Michael truly returns to my life, that relationship will be built on this understanding, not as a son seeking control or advantage, but as an adult capable of respect and genuine love. And if that day never comes, I'll still be at peace. The rose bushes in the garden swayed gently in the night breeze, strong, radiant, alive, just like me. And for now, that alone is a complete victory. Sometimes, the distance between a mother and the child she loves doesn't come from hatred, but from the words that were never spoken. Donna's story, though names and places have been changed, is a fictional tale inspired by real emotions many of us have felt. When love and gratitude no longer walk hand in hand. What would you do if the one who hurt you most was the very person you brought into this world? Would you stay silent for the sake of peace, or speak out to reclaim your dignity? There is no right answer, only the truth within each heart. And even when the road feels lonely, Donna believes that God is always watching, blessing those who live with a clear conscience and a forgiving heart. Thank you for watching till the end. Stay with us and choose one of the 2 videos on your screen. Each story is a journey of faith, love, and forgiveness.